This is the first video in a series of videos I will make about the Dan Markel murder. The case is going to trial. The trial is finally going to start. The murder happened in 2014. We're now in September of 2019, and finally the case is going to trial against 2 of the 3 people that were charged with the first-degree murder. So this first video that I'm making is going to be about the marriage and the divorce of Dan Markel and Wendy Adelson. So this one is really about some background before we get to videos about the actual murder. And it may help explain the possible motivation behind the murder. So Dan Markel and Wendy Adelson were married in 2006 in Boca Raton, Florida. At the time, Dan was a law professor at the College of Law at Florida State University. By the way, that's where I graduated from law school back in 1998. And Wendy was a law student at the university. I guess when they met, Dan was a law professor and Wendy was a law student at the University of Miami School of Law. So they married in 2006 in Boca Raton. They're both from affluent family. Wendy's family is from South Florida, Coral Springs, and Dan's family is from Toronto in Canada. Dan was a very smart guy. He went to Harvard and Cambridge. So he was a sharp law professor who had a tenured position at Florida State University. Wendy Adelson was a sharp young lady. She went to undergrad school at Brandeis University. She also got a master's in philosophy at Cambridge, and finally a law degree from the University of Miami School of Law. And like I said, she graduated from law school in 2006, and that's the same year that she and Dan Markel got married. And Dan was about 7 years older, and Dan was about 7 years older than Wendy. So the marriage, I guess initially, from everything I've read, and I've read the divorce papers, and obviously I've seen a lot of reports about the case online. So from everything I've read, the marriage went really well early on. Like I said, Dan had a tenured professor position at Florida State University College of Law. Wendy eventually was able to start working for the university, for the College of Law as well, as a visiting professor. And by the time of her filing for divorce, she was still on a temporary position with the College of Law. They had 2 kids, 2 boys. By the time of the divorce, which was filed in September of 2012, they had 2 boys. One was Benjamin, who was born in July of 2009, and the other one, Lincoln, who was born in October of 2010. So they were both, one was about almost 2 years old, one was 3 years old, close to 4 maybe, at the time of the filing of the divorce. So marriage went well, but then they had the 2 kids. They were close in time. They were born not very far apart, so their age difference was I think less than 1 year in age difference. So from the wife's perspective, she became more unhappy after the children were born. Primary responsibilities for taking care of the kids were left to her. Her husband obviously felt that he had a much more important position. He was dedicating himself to publishing papers. He was traveling a lot to give lectures and to participate in conferences. Wendy was left alone. They only lived in Tallahassee particularly because of Dan's job here. So she had no connection, no family in Tallahassee. He had no connection, no family in Tallahassee either. So it was a situation where wife is left alone. She still has a job, but she was feeling bored. She was dissatisfied with the marriage. She apparently was dissatisfied with the attention that she was receiving from Dan Markel. And during one of those short business trips, she filed for divorce, and Dan comes back to their house, and the house is vacated, and there's divorce papers on their marital bed. Unfortunately, the divorce, which, like I said, was filed in September 2010, was not an amicable divorce. She did not try to escape with the children. However, she did file an amended petition a few months later seeking to permanently relocate the kids to South Florida, given the address to where she would go, basically to her parents' home. She claimed that she got a better job offer from a law firm in South Florida, that she would make more money, and that she would be close to her family. And in essence, she would have a supporting system around her, her own parents and her brother who lived there, etc., etc. And Dan Markel, instead of allowing that to happen, allowing his wife to move, decided to fight her, decided to object to it. And so, let me see. So Wendy was represented by a good lawyer, a woman that I do not know personally. I do know her son. Her name is Wendy Adelson. I know her son, Brett Landau, who's an awesome tennis player. He actually played tennis in college. He doesn't live in Tallahassee now, but for some time he used to coach my daughter, and I've played a couple of times with him. Anyway, that's a little side note. So Kristen filed a petition, the amended petition, explaining why it would be important for the wife to move to South Florida, indicating several reasons. Number one, that she was not comfortable and that it was a hostile environment at the College of Law, because supposedly Dan Markel was telling people that the reason for the divorce, or the reason the wife left him, was because she was having mental health issues. Perhaps it is not as specific as to what he was saying, but maybe perhaps he was telling people that she was going through postpartum depression or something like that. So that was one of the complaints that she made. She also claimed that he was telling people at the law school that she had stolen money from him, apparently because she had decided, when she decided to separate, to take half of the money on their joint bank account. So he was telling people that she stole from him. And then finally, the other reasons that she gave was that, again, there was no connection to Tallahassee. She had a support system in South Florida, and that Dan had been looking for jobs in a bigger city throughout the whole time that they were here in Tallahassee at the College of Law. That his intention was always to go to a bigger city, that they had been considering going to South Florida, so that there was no need, while the kids were small, to keep him here stuck in Tallahassee, especially since their dad was probably going to move anyway. The husband's attorney, he hired a guy who apparently was also a good lawyer. He was board certified in marital law at that time, but is one of those typical, at least from the pleadings that I read, is one of the typical jerky type of lawyers that represent guys in divorces. I have some limited experience in divorce law. I try to stay away from it, and for the most part, well, actually every single time, I've only represented women, because every single time that I've seen, at least, I know that sometimes women can be unreasonable in divorces and make unfair accusations, but from all the ones that I've seen, it was usually the husband who was the unreasonable one. And again, I don't like to generalize. Every single case is different. But at least from my perspective, at least the clients that I had, I always preferred, and I was happy with representing the women. And often felt that the husbands were being quite ridiculous. So let's do a little side note. I mean, come on. Even before I watched that great movie, The War of the Roses, I'm the type of guy that I know that I would never give a woman any difficulty if she wanted A, to break up, or B, if I ever married, and I am married and I have kids. So if my wife ever contemplated divorce, was unhappy, whatever, met another guy, it doesn't matter what, I would never give her a hard time. If she wanted the kids full time, I would give them to her, and I would hope that with time things would cool off, and then she would allow me to see the kids as often as possible, unless there was some grave danger to my kids. And obviously sometimes these guys claim that, but for the most part it's false. You know, I don't see a reason why you would take the kids from the mom if the mom who carried them for 9 months wants to be the primary caretaker. If she wants to share half and half, perfect. If she wants to be the primary, my personal philosophy is the husband should allow it to the wife, because the wife has the heavier load in carrying the babies and taking care of the babies early in life. So anyway, going back to the case itself, this guy that Dan Markel was filing some nasty responses to the memorandums of law that the wife filed in support of her petition to relocate. Let me give you as an example just the end of one of those. Like here's the reply to the memorandum in support of the wife's petition to relocate. This was filed by the husband and by the husband's attorney, this guy Thomas Duggar, Duggar. But keep in mind that Dan Markel also signed every single one of those documents. Let me just read to you one paragraph at the very end, and you can see that the tone is not nice, pretty disgusting, and that's the type of thing that you see when you have those type of jerky lawyers that instead of trying to reason with their clients, make things a lot worse, in my opinion. So here it goes. He was very condescending too. So in sum, while pleadings must normally be read with charity to the petitioner, it does not mean suspension of all disbelief, especially in a fact-pleading jurisdiction like Florida. Pleadings must be very specific and offer some form of plausibility. The wife's pleadings are vague, filled with rank and obvious falsehoods, and the legal analysis is fundamentally inept. Even if all the facts in the wife's petition were taken as true, there is no allegation of economic necessity or parents who are unwilling or unable to be involved in a deep and loving fashion. For the preceding reasons, the petition should be dismissed with prejudice and costs awarded to the husband. Indeed, if costs are not awarded, then wife and her affluent parents, who are bankrolling the wife's litigation so that they can enjoy closer access to the grandchildren, will persist in vexatious and groundless litigation and thereby prevent the parents from reaching a space where they can cooperate, collaborate, and communicate effectively and warmly in the project of raising their wonderful children. So here, let's get to the chase. So she filed for divorce. She filed a petition to move. The guy objected it pretty nastily. The law in Florida generally, historically, it always favored men. So the law on relocation is obviously against relocation. And who's usually seeking relocation? It would usually be a wife who feels abused, who feels that she needs a distance from a former husband, who feels that, you know, she needs a job somewhere else, or so on and so forth. So, technically speaking, maybe the husband's position was a little bit stronger. Had I been the judge, and in this case, the judge was Barbara Hobbs, and I'm not a big fan. She's an okay judge, but I'm not a huge fan. So she denied the petition to relocate. I don't think it should have ever gotten to the judge. Honestly, I think that a good lawyer would have talked to Dan Markel, say, listen, let her go, let her start her new life in South Florida, and the kids will be happy. And look, it didn't work out. I'm sure that she will let you see the kids. You have a flexible position as a professor. You can visit often. They're offering you to do that. And let things cool down, and eventually, hopefully, things will get better. That's what I would advise. But anyway, had I been his lawyer, I guess perhaps he might have been alive today. We don't know that for sure, of course. And I don't want to be presumptuous, and I don't want to blame the lawyers, because I don't know, maybe that all came from Dan Markel himself. But the bottom line is that the petition to vacate, the petition to move was denied. Then the parties reached, I guess, an amicable resolution of the divorce, where both parents stayed in Florida, in Tallahassee, while the divorce was pending. Before the hearing on the petition to relocate, her own position, Wendy Adelson's position at Florida State College of Law became permanent, and obviously that made it even harder for her to win the motion to relocate to South Florida. But so they both stayed in Tallahassee by order of the court. They both had to share the children quite often, and they were doing that. Apparently, Wendy started to date another law professor at the law school, which I'll discuss later, and then the litigation in the divorce continued. And closer to his death, the litigation involved different issues. By the time, I think it was in the middle, just early in 2014, I think different divorce lawyers became involved. There was Scott Snavely, who filed some pretty nasty and long motion to enforce marital settlement agreement, claiming that the wife had committed some fraud, some nasty allegations in there as well. The wife's attorney, Christine Adamson, had to withdraw. I don't know exactly who took over for her. And not too long after that, Dan Markel was murdered by what it looks like was a hitman. And as I will discuss in the videos about the criminal case itself, it seems pretty obvious that it was somebody in the Adelson family. She had her parents in South Florida and one of her two brothers in South Florida. They all worked in the same clinic. They had a lot of money, and were probably discontent about how Dan Markel was being a jerk, and how his attorneys were being jerks, how they were making Wendy suffer through all this litigation in the divorce case. And apparently somebody decided to take matters into their own hands. But I go by one rule. It's possible that Dan Markel was a total jerk and that he made unwise decisions during the divorce. Yes, it's possible. Probably even likely. From what I've read and everything I read in the divorce, it looks likely. Okay? So he wasn't a saint. But either everybody counts or nobody counts. That's a line from a character, Hieronymus Bosch, from the Harry Bosch series of books by Michael Connelly. So he says, he's a murder investigator, and he says, everybody counts or nobody counts. And the bottom line is this. Nobody has the right to decide that someone else should not live. They're being jerks. I mean, unless it was a threat to the life of Wendy Adelson, who it doesn't look like this was the issue. There was no allegations of abuse at all, physical abuse or anything like that. Come on, there's no way that this would have been justified. So this was a murder that should never have happened, and every person involved should be punished, and hopefully they will. One of the points that I'm going to make in my videos is this, is that we're now almost 5 years, we're about 5 years removed from the murder. For all this time, it's very possible that these children have been living with one or more of the people who likely orchestrated this whole thing, who likely orchestrated the murder, who likely paid for it. That is not justice. And justice delayed is justice denied. I do not understand why this case is taking so long, and I'll address that more in future videos. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to support this channel. Thanks. It's free.